Most of the time, when somebody does an interview, the news stations basically cut and edit and splice. And it's the old saying, most of your interview, most of what you said ends up on the editing room or cutting room floor. And especially nowadays with social media, you can do an interview like I've done countless of times for news stations or news stories with reporters and whatnot. And by the time you sit down and actually watch yourself and watch the interview you just did, everything is basically out of order, doesn't make sense, and you actually even question yourself sometimes, like, did I even say that? And that's because of the way they are rushing and basically cut down everything you said during the interview. So in this video, I'm gonna put in its entirety Brighton, New York Police Chief David Catholdi during a press conference a couple days ago about 24-year-old Angelina Griffin. She, if you've been following my updates, my videos. She is the predicate felon parolee who intentionally struck and killed Omar Coker. And this was last week. And there's a lot of interesting things about this case. And specifically, what I'm going to play here in a second is Chief Catholdi talking about ghost addresses and the way that basically it seems like Angelina Griffin played the system and, found the loopholes and basically had at least one ghost address, which appears to have been in Brighton, where parole officials basically had no idea even where she was. And this is really important because I'll explain why real quick. Some of you may be wondering, wow, why is Davy putting out all these videos about this incident? It's not really police related in the sense of it's not about police abuse, misconduct, corruption. Right, exactly. And I've already made that clear that you got to give credit where credit is due. And I'm really proud to say, that the Brighton, New York Police Department, led by Chief Catholdi and investigators like Captain Mike Desane, who I have a lot of respect for, great guy, they put together a great case. They located the vehicle that Griffin used to hit and kill Omar Coker less than 50 minutes, less than an hour after this woman got behind the wheel of her car and killed another human being. Brighton, New York Police Department had already located her vehicle, which is basically almost unheard of. We all hear about these cases, regardless where you are around the world watching this from. We all hear about these hit and run cases where sometimes it's not even, the case is not even solved, at least not for a while. But let alone less than an hour after this incident, Brighton, New York Police Department had located the vehicle involved, which is a Mercedes that she was driving. Excuse me. So what's going on here is that she basically played the system. She was off the radar, and parole officials had no way of even knowing not only where she was, but what she was up to. And by now, we basically see what she was up to. There's also some reports that this may have been a robbery, several $1,000s that Mr. Coker may have robbed from her just before he was killed. She ran him down, according to police, it seems like as part of retaliation or retribution for being robbed. But regardless, it shows you the evil that there is living among us in the world, where a woman could get behind the wheel of her car and run this man down. Some reports say that she hit Omar Coker and that he flipped as high as 20 feet in the air before landing, and obviously he died at the scene. Brighton, New York Police Chief David Catholdi says that estimates evidence indicates she was traveling about 60 miles per hour, which, if you know Brighton, New York, that's pretty much flying down Highland Avenue, which is it's not a big, it's just a one lane one way, one lane the other. So it's just, my son, there's a school which Chief Catholdi mentioned in his press conference. There's a school, Council Rock Elementary, which is just a couple blocks down the street. And then my son just recently reminded me, after I told him about the case, he recently reminded me that one of his best friends from school actually lives on that street. So this could have been anyone. This could have been an innocent person a child that would have been struck and killed. So this case has really just, for me, disgusted me. It really just, hit a nerve in me about how one human being could have such little regard for the life of another human being, where she hit him and simply just drove off. So we're going to roll this video, and I thought it was interesting because it's something that could affect all of us potentially, and that is that we literally don't know. You literally don't know right now who your next door neighbor is. And for an individual to have this much evil, and for them to be involved in things that you may have no clue about. This person could be living right next door to you, to your children. And again, it just really, really disgusts me. Of course, those of you who know how outspoken I am, how vocal I've been, and how much I've criticized the hypocrisy and the double standards of groups and so-called movements like Black Lives Matter. Of course, you won't hear a peep from them. We'll get to that in another video that I'm working on. You won't hear a peep from Black Lives Matter or anyone denouncing this senseless act of violence. And by the way, yes, both the suspect and the victim in this case are African American. But you won't hear any of these so-called groups and so-called movements denouncing this violence. So again, great job to the Brighton, New York Police Department. And let's roll the video.
So as you know, the Chiefs Association here in Monroe County has been very vocal sometimes about parole and parolees living in our community. And this is certainly not to cast a bad light on the men and women who work in the parole system every day, the boots on the ground, if you will. We believe that Ms. Griffin was using that East Avenue address in the Country Club Apartments, and this is my term, a ghost address. Parole had no idea that she was living there. And I know there's a lot of talk in the community about loosening some of the restrictions of paroles. And it's this type of conduct when parole officers don't know where their parolees are living and they can't monitor what they're doing. It only further leads them down the path of criminal conduct. And maybe if there were some more stringent requirements in place of parole and parole officers were allowed to do their jobs, maybe this wouldn't have happened. If we would have known, if parole may have known that she was living there, they could have done home visits. That's the whole purpose of home visits, to see what they're doing and where they're living, so they don't reoffend.